And it's one thing for, somebody around the internet to see this and it get put out there, yada, yada, yada. But now a couple of things has happened. Number one, this clip was put out by USA Basketball themselves.
When a video gets posted on the internet, it's usually not a big deal. People share clips all the time, they go around for a day or two, and then they disappear. But this situation is different. A few things happened that show this wasn't just a random moment floating across social media. This time, the video came from a very specific place, USA Basketball themselves. This wasn't a fan account digging up a highlight. It wasn't a clickbait page trying to stir up drama. It wasn't an editor trying to get views. The official USA Basketball social media team took one particular play, Paige Bueckers blocking Caitlin Clark's shot, and pushed it out to millions of followers. That alone tells you this wasn't accidental. If you've spent any time following women's basketball, you know that these things are chosen carefully. Nothing goes up on those accounts without a purpose behind it. And that's where the bigger issue lies. Are we really supposed to believe USA Basketball doesn't have its own agenda? That's hard to accept, especially after what happened during the 2024 Olympics. The world watched as Diana Taurasi made the team while Caitlin Clark, fresh off breaking the all-time NCAA scoring record and carrying women's basketball into a new level of popularity, was left off the roster entirely. Taurasi, one of the greatest players ever, was clearly at the tail end of her career. She barely played in Paris. Most of the time she sat at the end of the bench, exhausted, unable to contribute the way she once could. Meanwhile, the team claimed they needed veteran leadership. But what they really needed was a scorer, a playmaker, and a rising star who had energized the sport. Caitlin Clark was that player. The choice to leave her behind didn't make much basketball sense, but it made perfect sense when you understand who has been shaping these decisions for decades. There's a long-running pipeline that has influenced USA Basketball selections for years. The Yukon Connection. Sue Bird, Gino Arima, and the entire network surrounding that program have had enormous influence. Paige Bueckers is part of that same tree. She checks a lot of the same boxes. That's not speculation, it's observable. And it becomes even more obvious when you see how certain storylines suddenly appear across media, almost like they were coordinated. So when USA Basketball posts a clip that puts Paige above Caitlin, it's not surprising to see the reaction. Fans who already dislike Clark or feel threatened by her spotlight jumped on it immediately. That's what social media does. People take victory laps over moments that don't even matter. But it's another thing entirely when the organization itself is feeding the narrative. Next, you see reporters joining in. For example, WNBA analyst Andrea Carter spoke about Caitlin's performance during Team USA's December 15th training camp on a podcast. She did compliment Clark, saying her shot looked good, her speed seemed to be returning, and her passing was sharp. But then Carter shifted the conversation toward Clark's defense, emphasizing that it's an area where everyone knows she needs improvement. She also talked about watching Clark match up with players like Kelsey Plum and Paige Bueckers, and she framed it as studying how these players will work together one day. That wording matters. Not if, but when. In other words, the conclusion seems already drawn. Paige is being shaped as the future face of the national team, while Clark's place looks more conditional, more questioned, more carefully evaluated. Yet Carter left out a crucial detail. Caitlin Clark played only 13 games last season after returning from an injury. 13. She didn't have an off-season to rebuild her defense. She didn't get to go through a full training camp to regain conditioning. She spent the entire period rehabbing, recovering, and slowly getting back into form. But the moment she steps into a showcase scrimmage in December, still shaking off rust, her defense becomes the big talking point. You don't see the same treatment with Paige Bueckers, even though she has dealt with major injuries herself, including an ACL tear and a tibial plateau fracture. No one constantly asks whether those injuries affected her quickness or defensive awareness. The scrutiny isn't equal. The standards are not being applied the same way. Then comes the clip itself. They've played against each other only a handful of times, and yet USA Basketball chooses this moment, out of everything they could show, to broadcast to the world. They knew exactly what would happen next. They knew the anti-Clark crowd would swarm, mock, and use it as proof that Paige deserves something Clark supposedly doesn't. They knew it would spark the same tired debate that's been forced into every corner of women's basketball. From a professional standpoint, the choice to post the video looks irresponsible. It added fuel to a fire that didn't need more oxygen. Instead of celebrating both players or showing team chemistry or highlighting skill development, they picked a clip designed to stir controversy. Best, it was tone-deaf. At worst, it was intentional groundwork being laid for future roster decisions, especially with major tournaments like the 2026 World Cup and the 2028 Olympics approaching. And honestly, if you've been watching how things have been handled, it's not hard to see the pattern. Step 1. Show Paige in a favorable moment against Caitlyn. Step 2. Let social media react and amplify it. Step 3. Allow reporters to casually mention Clark's weaknesses while praising Paige's strengths. Step 4. When the time comes to select a roster, the public has already been conditioned to accept the idea that Paige fits better or deserves it more. That's how narratives are built. Not overnight, but slowly, through carefully chosen clips, subtle commentary, and repeated emphasis on one player's flaws over another's strengths. So yes, people are frustrated because once again, it feels like the organization responsible for representing the best of American basketball is playing favorites. And whether fans agree or disagree, the pattern is hard to ignore. Choosing this moment to elevate Paige while indirectly diminishing Caitlyn was unnecessary, unprofessional, and revealing. In the end, it's clear this wasn't just a harmless video. It was part of a larger picture, one that has been forming for years. And if you've been paying attention, you can see exactly where it's heading. When you look at the comment section under that USA Basketball post, it's immediately clear that the reaction was predictable. The moment the clip went up, people rushed in with comments like, "Paige destroyed her," "Caitlyn is overrated," "Paige over Caitlyn every day," and every other insult you'd expect. The same group of people who always celebrate anything negative about Caitlyn Clark arrived within minutes. And honestly, that's exactly what USA Basketball knew would happen. This clip wasn't shared because it showed some brilliant piece of defense, or because it highlighted an important part of practice. It wasn't chosen because it represented teamwork or improvement. It was chosen because it would stir people up, pull in massive engagement, and feed a narrative that has been slowly shaping itself around women's basketball for months. It gave ammunition to everyone who has tried to tear down Caitlyn since the day she entered the league. This is how narratives get built. First, you put out something that supports the storyline you want. Then social media runs with it, arguing and building momentum. That conversation grows over time, and eventually, when roster decisions are made, the people in charge can point back and say, "Look at how the public reacted." This is consistent with what we've been seeing. It's a long game, and USA Basketball knows exactly what they're doing. Even the jokes in the comments were expected. People saying, "CC fans are coming," or "USA Basketball cooked her again," or shout out to them for giving us the content we asked for. None of this happened by accident. The people picking these clips knew this reaction was coming. They chose this moment specifically because they understood how the internet works. And honestly, if you followed women's basketball for any amount of time, you've already seen how this system operates. The so-called UConn Mafia, as people like to call it, isn't shy about protecting their own. Gino Arima was hyping up Paige Bueckers long before she ever played a single WNBA minute. Sue Bird has been positioned as the guiding voice behind major USA basketball decisions for years. Several of the most influential decision-makers all come from the same pipeline. And when a new star comes along, especially one who didn't come through that pipeline, they're judged differently. That's exactly what's happening with Caitlyn Clark. Media insiders pick apart her defense in every interview. They point out her weaknesses before mentioning any of her strengths. When Paige Bueckers is discussed, she's spoken about like a guaranteed future roster member. The tone is completely different. One player is treated like the expected choice. The other is treated like she has to prove herself again and again, even when she's already proven more than most players ever will. This all comes back to something simple: who fits the preferred narrative? Caitlyn Clark brought attention to women's basketball in a way we haven't seen in decades. She sold out arenas everywhere she went. She put up historic numbers. She made people who never watched a single women's basketball game suddenly tune in. Her impact was so massive that even people who don't follow sports knew her name. And for all of that, she was left off the Olympic roster in favor of Diana Taurasi, a legend, yes, but someone who could barely stay on the floor during the games. That decision never made sense in terms of basketball, but it made perfect sense if you understand the politics behind women's basketball at the highest level. And now we are watching the same pattern begin again. USA Basketball posts clips that paint Paige in a stronger light while highlighting Caitlyn's mistakes. Media insiders talk about Caitlyn's defensive shortcomings, while conveniently ignoring the fact that she had just returned from injury and had limited time to recover, train, or build conditioning. Meanwhile, Paige's own injury history rarely gets mentioned at all, even though she's missed huge chunks of time throughout her college career. It's not an even playing field. It hasn't been for a long time. Caitlyn can't control any of this. She can't control what clips USA Basketball chooses to post. She can't control how reporters frame their conversations about her. She can't control whether the people in charge prefer players from certain programs. All she can do is show up, play at an elite level, and hope her performance speaks louder than politics. But history tells us that in women's basketball, politics often wins. The people connected to UConn look out for each other. Always have. Always will. Their opinions carry enormous influence across the sport. And players like Caitlyn, players who didn't come from that circle, who didn't go to that school, who didn't come up through that network, often have to fight twice as hard for recognition that others receive automatically. That clip wasn't about celebrating a great defensive moment. It was about shaping a long-term narrative. And that narrative is going to follow Caitlyn through the entire next Olympic cycle. No matter how many points she scores, no matter how much she improves, no matter how much she contributes to her team's success, the storyline has already been planted. Watch how things unfold over the next year and a half as the 2026 World Cup approaches. Watch how often Paige gets featured in promotional content. Watch how often Caitlyn is criticized for the same things other players get forgiven for. Watch who gets praised without question and who gets analyzed under a microscope. Then ask yourself if the final roster is really about selecting the best possible team, or keeping control in the hands of the same people who have been running things for decades. Caitlin Clark will keep doing what she does. She will keep scoring, leading, improving, and making an impact that's impossible to ignore. But the real question is whether her performance will ever matter more than the politics around her. And that leads to the final point. If Paige makes the 2026 World Cup roster over Caitlyn, even if Caitlyn has better stats, bigger impact, and more wins, will people honestly believe it was just a basketball decision? Or will they recognize what it truly is? The continuation of a system that has been operating the same way since long before Caitlyn arrived? Tell me what you think. This story definitely isn't finished.